When it comes to objections in your sales meeting, Benjamin Franklin had it right. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In part 2 of our objection session, we're discussing how to prepare your sales dialogue to prevent as many objections as you possibly can before they come up. You see, once a prospect expresses an objection, it becomes real in her mind, and it requires more work on your end to help her see otherwise. To minimize the chances of this happening, you want to follow these 3 steps to prevent objections. First, you want to address common industry-specific concerns early in the dialogue. Next, you must avoid feature dumping. And most importantly, you want to make sure you're able to clearly show your buyer that the cost of the problem is greater than the cost of the solution by focusing on mission-critical priorities. Let's start with addressing the most common concerns. At the beginning of this module, you wrote 5 common objections that you hear or will likely hear from buyers. One of the best ways to come up with a more inclusive list is to brainstorm with coworkers and senior team members on what they've heard over the years. This brainstorming session is also a great time to share ideas on how others have handled these concerns. Your goal for each of the common concerns you've identified is to find ways to neutralize the concern that are within your control. To do this, go through each of the examples on your list and role-play addressing these concerns early in your sales dialogue. A good rule of thumb is to get these out of the way before the halfway point of your first meeting. So for example, one of the most common excuses for people to not exercise is that they don't have enough time. However, we know that people make time for things that are important to them, just like top sales professionals make time to practice and prepare. So if you're selling fitness club memberships or personal training sessions, you would want to have the discussion on when the prospect plans on exercising early in the conversation, long before you bring up the membership agreement and the prices. And that's because as you approach the end of the meeting, the prospect knows there's a chance she may get asked to make a decision and will start putting up her defenses. And that's when all the excuses start flowing. So in our fitness membership example, it can be as simple as helping the prospective member visualize themselves working out on the way home from work before they start binge watching their favorite TV shows. Having the conversation early creates a more comfortable environment for your buyer to envision themselves using your solution without the anxiety of having to make an actual decision. If you don't handle that common concern of not having enough time early in the conversation, when the conversation turns to the paperwork, the buyer will consciously or subconsciously begin to look for rational reasons to not complete the purchase. And boom, not enough time is the first thing they grasp to. Now earlier I mentioned neutralizing concerns in a manner that is within your control, which means to not make excuses to yourself as to why prospects did not buy. You might notice that prospects have a common concern with your specific solution that maybe could be addressed from upper management. So it's your responsibility to share this information and create two-way communication between you and your senior manager. But that still doesn't take away the responsibility for you to overcome objections early in the process. Take this example. Let's say you're selling software as a service and compatibility is a common concern that customers bring up. While it's not within your control as a member of the sales team to expand what other technology your software is compatible with, you can be sure to have the conversation regarding compatibility early in the sales dialogue and pull in the appropriate decision makers to look for possible ways to make sure your solution can be compatible. Go ahead and pause the video now and make some notes on your objections list on ways to proactively have these discussions with buyers early in the sales meeting. And when you come back, we'll jump into feature dumping. All right, jumping back into feature dumping. One of the first things sales professionals learn is that selling is not telling. But there are still so many sales practitioners that will spray all the bells and whistles to their solution in hopes that something they say will catch their prospect's attention. Such a bad idea. You see, when you start going through all the features your product has to offer, as the research revealed in Neil Rackham's book, Spin Selling, you actually start to increase the amount of objections your buyer has. There's 2 reasons why feature dumping is likely to increase the number of objections you'll receive. First, it's likely that you'll spend a lot of time going over features that your prospect does not think she needs or wants, and therefore doesn't want to pay for. The second reason, and perhaps the most important reason, is that you're taking the focus away from the buyer's specific mission-critical problem that your solution can solve. You see, before you spend time on features, both you and your prospect have to be on the same page regarding the specific business problems you're trying to solve and how your solution is going to help solve them. As we discussed in the Sales Fit module, you do this by asking questions that identify problems that your product can solve better than your competitors, so you can spend time focusing on the features that are critical to your specific buyer's needs. Ultimately, to get your prospect to buy, you must change the focus from features to solving business problems. You have to tip the scales to show that this formula is true for your buyer before she'll be open to making a purchase decision. And though your job is not 100% complete yet, you are getting much closer. Reflect back on our mission critical priority conversation, and you'll recall that you must clearly show that your solution is going to help solve at least one of the 3.5 critical business problems that all companies have: financial goals, market share goals, and stakeholder satisfaction goals. Oh, that's right. And don't forget regulatory priorities as well. If you fail to address one of these 3.5 critical priorities, your solution will be put in the nice to have category instead of the have to have category. And just like the bathroom remodel that's on a homeowner's wish list, it could be years before your buyer finally makes a decision. Here's a more concrete way to look at this concept. If you're selling a printer that breaks down less often, you're not selling a more reliable printer. You're selling more productivity. If you sell a printer that has a print from Wi-Fi option, you're not selling convenience, you're selling more productivity. Ultimately, your solution has to connect to a financial gain, an increase in market share, and/or stakeholder satisfaction. Let's quickly recap what we've covered and know that you are encouraged to go back through your notes several times to become more comfortable with this information. First, you must know your market and what the common pains are for your target audience. Next, avoid the spray and pray method. Control the conversation to ultimately lead your buyer to seeing the value you bring by asking your prospect questions that help affirm the strengths of your solution and minimize the weakness. And next, always connect the prospect's MCPs, or their business needs, to your solution by showing them the cost of the problem is greater than the cost of the solution. Okay, you now have all the information you need to help prevent objections before they come up in your sales dialogue. You should be really proud of yourself right now. You've committed to the journey of mastering professional selling, and you're making it happen. I can't wait to see you in the next session.